Hi, let's take a look at the Transformers number 14 from Marvel Comics. This is the very first series. This is from 1986. The comic series itself was launched around 1984 to coincide with the first launch of the Transformers from Hasbro, the toy line and the cartoon line. Marvel Comics, of course, did a lot of work with, well, it was really Bob Budiansky who did a lot of work with the lore and the naming of the characters, etc., for Transformers. This is my first Transformers comic. This is my childhood copy. It's in fairly good condition because I read the heck out of this as a kid. Um, but there's some creases here, but I don't really care about that kind of thing. I just want to read the comics. Of course, this was bought from a convenience store, as you can see from the barcode. Um, I read this over and over again. This is one of my favorite Transformer comics. Of course, I had since bought many of the issues before this, of course, and after this. Um, yeah, Transformers was a huge phenomenon when it came out in the mid 80s. We'd never really seen anything like this before, and parents and kids were delighted by them. These comics were cool because they were a bit more sophisticated than the cartoons. The cartoons were great as well. Here's a full color ad for Marvel posters. Some of these, I mean, they look fairly basic, but some of these are probably, or all of them, are probably worth a lot today. Here's Jetfire being branded as a Autobot. So yes, written by Bob Budiansky, penciled by Don Perlin. In 1986 is weird in that the Transformers are going through a transition phase at this point in the franchise. Uh, because of the nature of monthly comics, I find that Marvel had a tough time keeping up with all of the developments that Hasbro was throwing at them for the toy line and of course the refreshment of the cartoons. There's like 3 seasons, four if you count the three part Rebirth, which had the Headmasters and Target Masters, but um, but yes, like in 1986, of course, what happened in 1986, Transformers the movie came out, and Transformers the movie either ignores or kills off most of the characters you see in this comic, and um, and that is in favor of a brand new line of toys. And here we're just, branding Jetfire as an Autobot, and we're going to christen like 5 new Autobots into here, most of which will either be ignored or killed in the movie, which came out that summer. But they still carried on. They still introduced more and more guys at their own pace. It was still a very successful comic book. Oh, these dry pages stick together. So here you have grapple, hoist, smokescreen, skids, and tracks. They're all going to be injected with their personalities again. They've been repaired after the big crash from issue 1 of the Ark into prehistoric Earth, and then this issue was all about them getting acclimatized to Earth. And here we have their competitors, the GoBots, in a Transformers comic, and that's because of a Nestle Quick sweepstakes where you can win the entire collection of GoBots. GoBots beat Transformers to the market by like a month or something like that. They were uh, put out by Tonka. Same idea as Transformers in that they took toys from Japan and rebranded them with a brand new backstory, etc. Um, yeah, I wasn't really into GoBots as a kid. Watching the cartoon nowadays, I find that they did a lot more backstory work and better storytelling with the origins of the GoBots. At least you can explain why there are female and male GoBots. The GoBots were humans on another planet that had two warring factions. They put their brains in robots, so all of the GoBots had human brains, which was established in the cartoon. And uh, so that's why you had female GoBots, male GoBots, etc. The problem was Tonka didn't put a lot of thought or energy into the naming. I mean, some guys just had like crappy names like Tank or something. Um, there wasn't a lot of world building when it came to the development of the toys, etc. But the cartoon had a great backstory. The toys themselves were dinky, and they had very um, basic transformations. You could make play sets for them and stuff. That was a plus because they were so small. They had a line called Super GoBots. These two were Super GoBots. I can't remember their names. But they also made Psykill the leader of the Renegades, I think they were called, and Leader One, leader of the good guys. Um, I think they're called the Defenders. Don't quote me on that. Their coloring is off here, but they made them into Super GoBots. I thought the Super GoBots line should have been the main GoBots line. They had great sophisticated um, transformations, and also most of them were made out of just metal, and they were like great toys. But GoBots hung on for a few years and got steamrollered by Transformers, which had way better fun toys, a better cartoon, more splashy, um, swanky, sort of like very appealing design work and storytelling. Even though the origin of the Transformers has always been sort of murky and wishy-washy. It's either Quintessons or created by gods or whatever. And here are the new Autobots going to transform. Great likenesses of the toys. This is fantastic. If you have the toys and you're reading this, it's great. So Bumblebee, the original Bumblebee, is going to be leading them on their first mission. Just show them around, how things work, etc. Here, this ad graced the pages of many, many, many Marvel comics. It's weird. So there was going to be a Captain America musical, and like a Broadway musical. And for some reason, instead of just getting a casting director, they decided to cast in the comics. So they're like, if you're a girl between 10 and 14 who can sing, dance, and act up a storm, you might be the person the cat's looking for. You can read about this online. I mean, there was going to be a Captain America Broadway musical. The story sounds interesting. It sounds intriguing, but ultimately, this never happened. It's funny because there is a Captain America musical in the Hawkeye TV series everyone talked about. They talked about that rather than Hawkeye because, my opinions about that show aside, that whole musical number was funny, but it was going to happen in the mid 80s, and it never did. But it's interesting to see these ads nowadays. If you pick up any mid 80s Marvel comic, you're bound to run into this. So here the Decepticons are trapped by the humans. They're trying to siphon oil to make energon cubes, which is what they run on. So you got Starscream, you got Thundercracker, you got Skywarp. They were 3 jets that were available from Hasbro at the time. Recolors of the same mold, but everyone loves Starscream. And here you got Shockwave. Shockwave is depicted as a 40-foot gun that can fly around. And at this point, Megatron is out of commission. They don't know where he is. So Shockwave is now the leader. Shockwave was a cool character in the cartoon. He had sort of like a subdued British accent, and ran things on Cybertron, but was sort of a second in command that was shadowy and would come into the picture every so often. These space tubes, I remember these ads. It's basically clear plastic tube with sparkles in it in either saline solution or water, and you just shake it and they make all sorts of colors. I don't know how many they sold, but they claim they're from deep within the heart of the universe, and they grow brilliant, soft-edged crystals called space tubes. I don't know how clear plastic grows in space, but sure. I mean, I wasn't stupid. I knew what they were. But I knew people who had these, so I guess they made a lot of money on this. One thing that strikes me about 80s comics is the sheer amount of comic stores that advertise in the comics. You don't see that anymore, and I wonder if that's just. I mean, I guess it is a sign of the times that for decades now we haven't really seen anything like this, where you can you can mail away. Well, maybe it's because of the internet, but really, I didn't really see this in the '90s either, when the internet was just coming into focus and still wasn't fully developed in terms of e-billing, etc. Um, but I mean, it's just yeah, I look at this and I look at a vibrant comic industry, basically. So the Autobots are getting used to having. They claim these are mannequins. I remember them being holograms in the cartoon, but just like a human double in there, something that looks like a human, so they don't freak people out. Um, and also their insignias sort of are masked, uh, so as not to arouse suspicion. There's like fun culture clash stuff going on here, like where they're speaking like robots, but the humans don't understand why they're so strange. So they go to a concert, which is I think they call them Brick Spring Stern or Brick Spring Horn. They keep changing the name, but it's supposed to be Bruce Springsteen, basically. Um, and yeah, you can see here like Born in America, etc. So the Decepticons are going to siphon off, I guess, the sound waves from that concert. It's not the greatest plan, and they're going to make energon cubes out of that. And the Autobots realize this because the sound is off, so that's the Decepticons doing their thing. And Skids here was barely in the cartoon, and I swear there was an episode where he basically dies, um, like one of the Decepticons rolls over him, and they depict him as being crushed, and then you never see him again. I know that's probably a mistake because no one ever died in that cartoon, except for the very end of Rebirth, where all the Autobot planes died. I remember that. Um, and here the Decepticons start attacking, and the Autobots have to transform into their robot bodies and start shooting down the planes, etc. Um, yeah, all this stuff was great because like Hoist is helping the humans here because their scaffolding is being damaged by the Decepticons. Um, all this stuff is great because it's like the classic designs. These are the toys I remember. These are the characters I remember. Here are some ads for comic conventions, still like a thriving comic industry. Um, all sorts of them. There's New York, Chicago, Manhattan, Arlington, Virginia. Nowadays, most of these would be called comic shows. And conventions, I feel like people reserve that distinction for the bigger things like San Diego Comic Con, etc. Here's a Shockwave confronting Bumblebee, who's tiny. I mean, Bumblebee was one of the lower price point toys, and Shockwave was a premium toy. He was the higher price point, and Shockwave is about to kill everyone in the stadium with one blast, and um, Bumblebee tosses like an energon cube at Shockwave, and it blows up in their faces, and all the Decepticons get tossed like miles away. So Bumblebee saves the day. Here's a holiday subscription offer for a lot of Star Comics. So you got He-Man, Masters of the Universe, Muppet Babies, Peter Porker. These are all intended for young readers. Fraggle Rock. I don't know what Young Astronauts is. Heathcliff. Ewoks based on the Saturday morning cartoon, as is Droids. Top Dog, which is a original Marvel character. Care Bears. Care Bears was huge in the 80s. People try to deny it, but it was true. Thundercats and Misty. I don't know much about Misty. That's Peter Porker's Protector Spider-Ham. That's Top Dog. It's Wicket from the Ewoks. That's Heathcliff, Santa, of course. And Strawberry Shortcake, who's nowhere on this list. I'm pretty sure they did make a comic for her. Most of the um, cartoon slash toy line franchises, especially if it was Hasbro, were done by Marvel, um, usually through Star. Um, G.I. Joe and Transformers were done through the Marvel imprint because Star hadn't happened yet. I'm thankful for that because Star was more kiddie and kid friendly. This is a bit more sophisticated, this Transformer stuff. I know Cops was DC though, and that was a Hasbro franchise. And here you have a letters page, everyone gushing over a character called Circuit Breaker, who was like a human that had cybernetic parts that can manipulate Transformers and break them apart, etc., with her mind. She's a Marvel character, and I find a lot of reprints of early Transformers comics done by anyone other than Marvel, like IDW, etc., have to have a synopsis of those issues because of that. Um, Especially the issue where Spider-Man turns up and fights Megatron. That happened as well. Here are some house ads for G.I. Joe comics, which were awesome, very well written. And here's another subscription page, more for the Marvel line of stuff. And also other things like Alien Legion, Dreadstar, etc. Here, Stan Lee's talking about Christmas. This is dated, I think, January 19. No, I can't remember. I think it's the end of 1986. No, it's March 1986. But they always have a, a sort of discrepancy as to when these comics come out. Um, but here they're talking about happy holidays, etc. Here's a checklist, and you can see from some of these entries, Secret Wars 2 is in full swing. Almost everything was a Secret Wars 2 tie-in, to the point where it was just a joke. And I know, like decades later, Deadpool did a joke where on the top corner of the um, cover it said Secret Wars 2 tie-in, because most of the time they weren't very significant. It was like Beyonder would show up for two panels at the end and say, "Oh, Beyonder observes what happened here," and takes off. Not much of a tie-in, but yes, Secret Wars 2 was in my opinion terrible. And here we have an ad for Questprobe, which was a series of video games put out by Scott Adams, who was the creator of Adventure, which was a bunch of text-based games. My dad always talked about Adventure when I was a kid. He loved those games, and here he was creating Marvel ones. There were going to be a whole bunch of ones. They had managed to put out a Hulk, a Spider-Man, and what they're calling a Fantastic Four game, but it was really Human Torch and the Thing. And basically, you would type in commands and read the text and type in more commands. They're pretty cool games. You could see them on YouTube. There was a comic book series developed around this. It was going to be 12 issues. It only lasted 3. Adventure Inc. Or Adventure International went bankrupt, and so they couldn't continue on with all of the games and comics. There was going to be an X-Men game. It didn't get released, and there was going to be an X-Men comic, and then that got printed a couple years later in Marvel Fanfare, and a lot of the Questprobe story, which is basically this dude. Can't remember his name, but he's the chief examiner. That's what his name is. He looks like Mysterio, and I thought that was Mysterio because I bought some of those comics. But he is trying to take some of duplicate some of the powers of the Marvel characters to take back with him to his planet to fight off invading aliens or something like that. That whole storyline was wrapped up in Quasar. I call him Quasar. I guess his name's supposed to be Kazar, but Quasar Comics, which came out a year after this. And that's it for Transformers number 14 from 1986. I hope you enjoyed this. Take care.